Today I want to talk to you about these, subs that go in your studio. So I want to give you a few little tips. I want to tell you what I know about them and what I'm thinking of doing with them, and then we'll get into it. My name's Alex Biggs from Soundbase Studios. Let's get into it. Okay, so basically I'm in a bit of a transition of what to do with this sub. I've got some pretty expensive Hedd monitors. They're the Type 20 Mark IIs, and they were about £3,500, and they cost quite a bit, obviously. And I've got a very cheap sub. This is a KRK. It was about 300, I think. It works okay. It goes down, I think, to about in the sort of mid-30s frequency, and it seems okay. But because I've got such good speakers, do I get a good sub? What is the benefit of getting a bigger sub, or two subs, or just a more expensive sub? If you want to subscribe, I'll try and find out some answers. Please write in the comments what your thoughts would be. What would you do? I've got 7-inch drivers on my heads. Now, if I upgrade to what would be a good idea in my head, would to get a 15-inch sub. But then you read and you hear articles where that because it's such a big sub, it kind of is a bit slower on response, so it might not match the speakers I got. Then people say, well, I could get an 8-inch sub that goes in the mid-20s hertz, which is pretty much low enough for what I want, but they don't sound as good. Is that true? So let me know about your experiences, but this is my train of thought, and I'm going to give you a few little tips as well. So let's start with tip number 1. Take your sub off the floor. So what I find is that you've got to have a good sounding bass. And if you rest this on the floor, what happens is it vibrates the floor a little bit and you get a misreading that it's bassier than it is. But what happens is it muddies up everything. It makes the bass a little bit mushy, and you don't want that. You want a really nice, clean, precise note, which will help you with your mixing. Tip number 2, I guess, would be how you balance it out. Really, what I do is I turn my speakers on, and then this is on as low as it can go on the back. As you can see here, it's got a couple of dials for the frequency and the volume, or decibels, how loud it's going to go. So what I do is gradually turn the decibels up until I can just notice a difference in bass, and that is where I want to be with this. I don't want to hear the sub, I want to hear it as if it's coming out my speakers, and that's what subs are supposed to do when you're mixing. And when I mix, I basically don't have this on anyway, I use it as a reference, but when I listen to music, I really like having the bass. So obviously as the volume on my speakers go up, this go up as well. I've got a separate output, a sub output on my monitor controller, which I use for this, and then I whack it on when I want to listen or when I'm mixing, just at the ends, just to check everything's okay. Now the other thing which I found is my third tip is that, again, everyone tells you something different. It's so confusing. It's like chocolate's bad for you. Oh no, it's not, but if you eat it, it's good for you. Or red wine, alcohol's bad for you. If you drink red wine, it's good for you. You know, there's always two sides. What I tend to do is just go off experience, and that's why I've given up drinking. But anyway, I get my speaker, and where it's supposed to be in line, so you're supposed to put your monitors here and then put your sub perfectly in line so you don't get phasing, and phasing is when the frequencies clash with each other and cancel each other out, because if you move your speakers further away or whatever, it just causes phasing issues. Now that might be true, but what I found is that when this is in line with my speakers, and my speakers are probably about this far away from the wall, about 1.5 feet away from the wall. It's all I can do in this room. And then if I put the speaker there, it's boxy, it doesn't sound good. What I've done is put it on this. As you can see, it's on a set of wheels which I can move the sub around, and also it's taken it off the floor by about 6-7 inches. And that's what I recommend you do. Just get it off the floor, and obviously you want the smallest point of contact. Wheels is a cool thing because obviously there's a tiny bit of contact to the floor which stops the bass coming through, and obviously I put it on a load of rubber as well. What happens is that when I start wheeling it away from the wall, the boxiness goes and it just sounds better. It just sounds better to me, and that's where I leave it. I've left it probably a quarter of the way in the room. My room's 16 foot, so it's going to be about 4 foot from the front, from the wall, and that just sounds absolutely great. So don't be afraid to move your sub, but if you're noticing problems in your mix, obviously you have to put it somewhere else, but just keep moving it around and that will really help. So there's my third tip. Also, another little thing that I do, which again they say you shouldn't necessarily do it, but again I use my ears, is on the back here. Can you see that you can actually change the frequency? So on my speakers, I have a cut off at 80 Hertz so that the speakers don't go any lower. So it means that this does all the heavy lifting, as it were, at the bottom. But if you listen to this at 80 Hertz and below, it just sounds like garbage. It sounds rubbish, although it's just the lowest bass frequencies. But I just don't think it sounds good. So what I've done is literally turned it increment by increment, like 81, 82, and I start going up in frequency, and it just seems to make the music sound better to me. But you can literally go only about 85, 86 Hertz, because the higher up you go, all of a sudden you start hearing it and you don't want to know where the sub is. So that's something you've got to watch out for. When you look at your speakers, you want to think the bass is coming from them, not from here. So if you start noticing it's from here, you've gone too high. But give that a go. Pull your speaker out, put it on a platform, you know, just put it on a set of books for now, and see how it sounds. Just tiny, go from 80 up a little bit and see if that improves the sound of your speakers as well. And yeah, don't be afraid to mess around with it. Don't just do what everyone tells you. Just go for it and see what you think and see how it performs. Now the question is what do I do with this? Do I go twice or three times as expensive? So say you're talking about £1,000 or £900 for a sub. Is that going to improve anything? So that's what I want to find out. So as I say, subscribe, because what I'm going to be doing is testing out a few subs just to hear the difference, see what the difference is, and see if it's worth upgrading. What am I missing out on? That's what I want to know. And the other question, which I'm trying to do, but it's difficult to get these, is to try and get two subs, because if people say use two subs, you've got then the phasing again, where one sub might cancel the other sub out. It might affect your monitors. Again, that would be something I wouldn't mind experimenting with, to have stereo subs, see what that does. I know generally it's a mono signal on these, but what does two subs do? I'm just curious. So again, write in the comments if you've got two subs. Did it make an improvement? Did it help with mixing? What I used to do, when my affiliation with bass is basically from being a professional drummer. As a professional drummer, I obviously got a lock in with the bass player, and so I just naturally like bass. When I go to clubs, I always like the bass in clubs. It sounds awesome. Back in the day when I used to drive a car with a big system, I used to work for a company, and I think they were part of the Blaupont stereos, and back in the day they were sort of the cream of the crop, and I had a massive system in the car, and as you can see from this picture, I made a massive box, put the sub in it, put some other speakers in it, and separated it all out. And you had to do it by measurements, how deep the box was, how big the port was. It was quite mathematical. But what I found was I did have a 12-inch sub, and when I was driving and I was playing some music, the kick would be literally, it was so powerful, it would be literally like someone's kicking the back of your seat. It was pretty incredible. So that was my 12-inch, and then people were saying, yeah, get the 15, it's just a better sound, it's lower. So I went and I put this 15 in, and it kind of shook the car. They were both incredible, they were both enjoyable, and again, they just offer different characteristics. So not only have you got different speaker manufacturers making a different sound, you've also got the size and the power of the speakers that change things. But what you don't want to lose sight of what you're using it for. I like listening to music loud. I like a lot of bass. So having a studio is a result, because it's pretty soundproof, not perfect, but it's good enough. So that means I can turn it up, but also when I'm mixing, I want a critical ear on all the frequencies across the range. So hence why I always double check against the sub. I did use some small KRKs to do a mix, and I did a couple of albums, but I had to take one album down. I just couldn't hear what I was mixing because the speakers were only 6-inch. They didn't go anywhere low, and the second album's still up. I'll leave a link. I'm probably going to take it down and remix it at some point in the future, but it's on sale everywhere. So you can have a little listen, and some of the tracks are so bassy, it's just I wasn't quite happy because I couldn't hear. So if you haven't got a sub, you can't hear. And obviously you can use headphones, but I always find headphones, it's a different experience, and then the people that bring me mixes where they've mixed on headphones aren't quite right. In your comments, just again write down what your experiences are. It'd be good to sort of have this kind of conversation about subs. And as I say, soon as I get another sub to test, I've got to find somewhere that's going to give me some subs to try out, and I'll post something on there. So it should be a lot of fun and hopefully be useful for you guys. All right. So anyway, I shall see you in the next one.